Tanking in the NBA right now is a hot button topic. A lot of people think tanking is never going away. The NBA has already tried multiple times to eliminate it, and it only seems like it's getting worse. But in the midst of all this brainstorming, I stumbled on something that I never expected. One little YouTube comment led me down a gigantic rabbit hole, and I realized the NBA is doing it wrong. They're trying to make their own solution to fix tanking when the perfect solution already exists. But it's not in the NFL. It's not in the MLB. It's not even in a league that you've ever heard of. It's in the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. And their draft system doesn't just reduce tanking, it completely eliminates it. And once you see how it works, you'll realize the NBA has been overlooking the one and only solution that they need. But very quickly before we get into this video, if you guys enjoy this type of content, all things NBA, make sure to hit that like button on this video. And also, if you guys want to stick around, see more of my content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers right now, trying to get monetized here on YouTube. And so every subscription means so much to me right now. But with all that out of the way, let's talk hoops. So yesterday, I saw this developing story that the NBA is discussing creating a tournament among the lottery teams to determine draft order in order to stop tanking. Now, it took less than 5 seconds for multiple people to poke holes in this solution. What if the OKC Thunder have some other bad team's first round pick? Do they play in this tournament? Or does the bad team play for them? Because either way, that creates a whole bigger issue, because the OKC Thunder will steamroll every bad team in this lottery tournament and get the #1 overall pick. But if this other team is playing for the OKC Thunder, well then they would just have no incentive to get a good pick because it's already going to another team. Overall, completely tanking the value of the first round pick, really. But this is a dark time in the NBA right now. A lot of teams are unethically and blatantly tanking worse than we've ever seen, and the NBA is trying to scramble to figure out how they can eliminate this issue. Now, a couple days ago, I did make a video about the history and the background of tanking in the NBA. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. So I'm not really going to go in depth on the history of tanking, but all you need to know is this season, tanking is at an all-time low right now. Because right now, for small market teams, the draft is the easiest and the cheapest way to change the trajectory of your organization. And in some cases, is the only way to change the trajectory of your organization. And the NBA has tried fixes to eliminate tanking in the past. In 2019, they changed the lottery odds. Before that year, the worst team in the NBA had a 25% chance at the first overall pick. But in 2019, the NBA changed it so that the top 3 worst teams have an equal 14% chance at the #1 overall pick. The NBA did this thinking that this would eliminate tanking because they were lowering the odds of the #1 overall pick. So teams would be less inclined to try and lose on purpose solely for only a 14% chance that they get a top pick. But unfortunately, that plan backfired because tanking is as bad as it's ever been. Because now teams that are on the bottom have a much harder time trying to get out of their position. Because year after year, they have such a low chance at a top pick that we are seeing teams that are above them in the standings leapfrogging them to get the #1, the #2 pick. While the worst teams are getting pick 5, pick 6, and ultimately they're just forced to lose for longer. But now let's shift over to the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. In that video that I referenced earlier, I received a comment that genuinely piqued my interest. The comment was a proposed solution about how to fix tanking in the NBA. And it says, the NBA should really take over the PWHL gold plan strategy, where once you're eliminated from playoff contention, you get 3 points for every win, 2 for an OT win, 1 for an OT loss, and 0 for a regulation loss. So the bad teams that are bad early would have more time to gather those points. Whoever has the most points at the end of the season gets the first overall pick. It would directly counter tanking and keep the league competitive even for teams out of playoff contention. And the reason why this comment piqued my interest so much is because I have never heard of this solution. And it's even crazier that this isn't just a random proposed solution. This is something that is actually happening in a different professional sports league. And so after talking with this commenter and kind of going back and forth and getting more background, he said that he had seen a video about how, the Professional Women's Hockey League has completely eliminated tanking with this strategy. And so after looking into it myself, I realized this is exactly the solution the NBA needs. So how would this look in the NBA? Well, let's take the Kings as an example, because the Kings right now have the worst record in the NBA. So it's likely that this season, the Kings are going to be the first team mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. So they are going to start earning these points quicker than anybody else. But very quickly after, the next worst teams are going to start being mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. The Wizards next, then the Nets, then the Pelicans, then the Jazz, and all these teams will start earning draft order points if they win their games late in the season. Imagine teams like the Kings and the Nets and the Wizards all eliminated from playoffs, and instead of racing towards the bottom of their conferences, they'd be racing each other to win games. So why would this eliminate tanking? Well, it would completely eliminate the incentive to lose. In the second half of the season, when we usually see tanking ramp up, instead, these teams will be fighting for the number 1 overall pick. They'll actually have to be winning against each other. There'd be no reason to shut down players for the rest of the season. There would be no reason to throw out these G League lineups in your games. Some criticisms that I see to a lot of the anti-tanking solutions that people make up is a lot of these solutions basically eliminate bad teams getting help. In my opinion, I think obviously the bad teams need the most help. That's why we have the draft. But with this solution, bad teams still get help because they're competing for the number 1 overall pick. But again, they have to compete for it. They don't lose for it. Another huge issue that this system eliminates is teams that barely miss the play-in spots jumping up to getting the number 1 overall pick, like we saw with the Dallas Mavericks last year and like we saw with the Atlanta Hawks 2 years ago. All of a sudden, these almost play-in teams that have a far better record than the worst teams in the league are jumping up and getting the best prospects, while these teams that are in last place are dropping all the way to the 6th or the 7th pick. That seems incredibly unfair. But with this system, the worst teams in the NBA would start accumulating points quicker. The Kings or the Pelicans might start accumulating these points with 20 games left in the season, while fringe teams in the past like the Mavericks and the Hawks might only get like 3 or 4 games to accumulate points because they're so close to the playoffs. And so it completely eliminates the case where a team like that can just randomly get the number 1 overall pick, because likely they're not going to be able to accumulate enough points in a handful of games versus a team that has 15, 20 games to accumulate these points. Now, the biggest criticism that I could see for this new strategy is, won't teams just tank from the jump to try and speed run their way to playoff elimination? But I don't really think that's realistic, because the beginning of the season and the first half of the season for basically every NBA team is, we want to see, how our team stacks up against the rest of the league. We want to see how our new guys play with each other. We want to see how our young guys are developing, and we actually want to try and win against our competition. And I don't think that changes in this new system. And so the first half of the season would be more for these young, bad teams to just, kind of see how their players develop and see how they work together. And then in the second half of the season, when tanking usually ramps up and gets as bad as it does, instead, that's when these teams would start hitting that threshold to be eliminated from playoff contention. And instead of tanking, all of a sudden, okay, now we have to get wins because we want to get the draft order points. If teams just tanked from the get-go, well, first of all, that wouldn't be advantageous for them, because if they're purposely losing, if they're purposely putting out bad lineups, when they ultimately get to the point to where they're earning these draft order points, they haven't developed their young players. They haven't created a system to try and, win these important games. And ultimately, they might just lose all of their draft order points games and fall in the draft. And so it's important for young teams and bad teams to still, develop competent rosters and competent chemistry by playing these guys in the first half of the season so that they can make late season pushes to try and win these important draft order games. And so looking at a glance, I can see that criticism of people being like, well, they would just tank right from the get-go. But when you look into it realistically, I don't think that would be a viable strategy in this new system anyways. And that's why I feel like this system is the best thing I have seen as an anti-tanking solution, because then every team has to be competitive throughout the entire year. The best teams are fighting for playoff spots and fighting for home court advantage in the playoffs, while the worst teams are fighting for that #1 overall pick against each other. Then these teams would get more development throughout the entire year, because instead of playing their best players for the first half of the year and then shutting them down for the second half, they would have to play them all the way through, while also increasing the integrity of the league. The league stops rewarding losing, teams stop trying to lose, and the standings just have more integrity, as well as the fans of these bottom feeder teams get to watch great games throughout the rest of the season. The NBA doesn't need more rules, it just needs a new incentive structure. It needs incentive to win, and this strategy completely removes the incentive to lose and places it on the incentive to win. But overall, this is the best system that I have seen out of the millions that I've seen on social media and on other sources. This is my favorite and the one that I think would eliminate tanking the best. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Would you like the NBA to adopt this system? If you guys can poke holes into this strategy, type them in the comments down below. I would love to debate and argue and just talk about it. Maybe you guys see things that I don't see. I would just love to hear your guys' perspective on this. But overall, that's really all I have for this video. If you guys made it this far, first of all, thank you guys so much for watching the entire video. I really appreciate it. But also, you guys made it to the end of the video. You obviously liked the content, so hit that like button on this video. Also, again, if you guys want to stick around, join my community, I would love to have you. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Lastly, if you guys want to see more content from me, YouTube actually thinks you'll really like this video right here. So once this video wraps up, make sure to click on this right here, and you can see another piece of great NBA content that I'm sure you'll enjoy. But that's really all I got for today, guys. So as always, peace and love.